Hello everyone, and welcome to the inaugural webinar of DevConnect. Thank you for joining us. I'm Eliane Badawi, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. We are happy to welcome Professor Leonard Wantchekonhas and Yabo Vidogbena. And here's what we have planned for the next hour and quarter. Our speakers will have 45-50 minutes for their presentations. Then we'll have a 20-minute Q&A session. Before we begin, I'd like to briefly introduce DevConnect, a network in development economics that you've recently joined, and we're very happy to have you with us. This initiative was made possible thanks to the motivation and efforts of committed researchers with whom I have the opportunity to co-develop it: Etienne Harb, Stefania Lovo, Omar Sen, and Shahir Zaki. The DevConnect team is likely to expand to include new roles. So if you are interested to contribute, feel free to contact us. Our objectives are multiple. In DevConnect, we aim to foster networking and collaboration among the international development research community, and we promote knowledge exchange among academics, policymakers, and practitioners. We also support early career researchers, especially from low-income countries. Our activities are multiple. We have a series of webinars, and we have other online and on-site events. So if you are interested, stay tuned for what's next. And we also have a mentoring program that aims to connect researchers on request to discuss papers, exchange research ideas, or support PhD projects. Please visit our website for more information. So if you want to contact the DevConnect team, you can use our email, so the network email, or you can write to any of the founders directly. We invite you also to submit papers via our online form, either to present in one of our next webinars, or if you want to request mentoring. Again, you can check our website for any updates or new resources. So for this webinar, to run it smoothly, there are a few rules. Please, we ask you to keep your microphones muted during presentations. Webcams are optional, so feel free to leave them on if you want. Use the chat and the Q&A box to post questions and comments anytime during the presentations. And you can also ask questions live directly by raising your hand. And in this case, we ask you to wait until I call you on, and keep your questions brief and turn on your webcam while speaking. We inform you that this webinar will be recorded. So thank you again for joining us. We are very happy to welcome Leonard Wantchekonhas and Yabo Vidogbena today. And it's my pleasure to introduce Leonard Wantchekonhas, professor at the Department of Politics at Princeton University. He holds a PhD in economics from Northwestern University and has previously taught at Yale and New York University. He's also the founder and president of the African School of Economics. His research spans political economy, development economics, and economic history. I had the opportunity to meet Professor Wantchekonhas in Paris last July. Not only he's brilliant in economics, but he also excels at creating engaging and interactive discussions with the audience and with researchers from diverse backgrounds. Thank you for being with us, Professor Wantchekonhas. The talk today will be about the effects of collective deliberation among bureaucrats on public service delivery with a field experiment in Benin. So thank you again, and the floor is yours.
Okay, so thank you very much for a very generous opportunity to not only engage with young scholars in development economics, but also with the profession, the development profession in general. So I will be first, thank you also for the conference in Nanterre that I was part of. Is probably one of the most impressive development economics events that I've been to, not only because of the diversity in background of the participants, coming from around the world. What is impressive is the fact that it's not something that just happened. It's something that you plan, something that you made sure that it's happened. And besides that, the diversity in methodology and macro theory, applied micro was really impressive. So I really encourage you for us to continue along those lines. So my presentation today will be on institutional editing and experimentation, which is a new approach that I have been developing for maybe the past 20 years or so, to not only complement development research, but also political economy, because political economy research tend to be very descriptive. It's about telling us what's wrong with government, what's wrong with the political system, but not enough is done to propose, to suggest, to prescribe. And this approach is what I will call prescriptive political economy, problem-solving oriented political economy, which is really needed. And the second point is all in terms of development economics. There is increased focus on policy relevant research, in education and health and governance and so on. But sometimes, or most of the time, policy requires governance reform. You need to think of a political environment or a governance setting that will make policy effective. And we need to think about how this reform can happen and what can be done. Now, when you think of governance reform, usually it's some kind of revolution. Like the governance is bad, let's replace it by a new one. But in fact, it has proven to be ineffective. Like things cannot change completely overnight. So as a result, you need to identify what the problem really is, what is the distortion in government, and once this is identified, you can pinpoint a change. You can pinpoint a reform that can be inserted in the existing governance arrangement so that you can solve the problem that you have in mind, whether it's corruption, whether it's passive or active corruption, or whether it's a lack of motivation, and so on and so forth. So one example of this is this exercise that I'm going to be talking to you about for the next 30 minutes, Benin. So it's bureaucratic deliberation and performance, evidence from a field experiment in Benin. Next. So the motivation of the study is the need for state capacity building. So it's very clear that having a well-functioning bureaucracy is essential for governance and for development. And the existing work emphasizes on the role of individual incentives and ability in shaping bureaucratic behavior. It's like some contractual arrangement with bureaucrats will do. But in fact, performance is deeply embedded in social and organizational context. And this not only comes from bureaucrats' belief about how the state, how the organization they are part of is organized, and they need to develop a shared expectation about performance the way change happens is not just individual being more competent, is the ability to share expectation about performance, not only of other people in the organization, but also the editing, and also the management. So, so the key then to governance improvement can be the ability to edit, to change the structure of a game being played, what I will call institutional editing, to improve performance and capacity. Next. So one important component, one important tool that I will be focusing on is deliberation. So why deliberation? Well, because it's not enough to provide information about performance. Is when all performance will depend on how everyone understand the information that's being provided, and we need also to think about how this expectation can be shifted. And for this to happen, you need some kind of coordination, communication, and deliberation is coordinated communication. So again, deliberation can, based on truthful information, can serve as a powerful institution for updating belief and shift beliefs in a way that improve performance. So by fostering open discussion, it can generate common knowledge and lay the groundwork for changing individual perception, both collective and individual. Next. So the question of this study in Benin is, does structured collective deliberation among bureaucrats improve bureaucratic performance and public service delivery? Next. So the study consists of a randomized control trial of 20 represented municipalities in September 16. The treated municipality organized structured internal meetings and deliberate issues that was contained in some external evaluation report, and the control municipalities were engaged in business as usual. Next. So the context is one in which the bureaucrats are, like, in most local governments, provide public goods and services. And the data that we have are annual audit report published by the central government. And we also have the Afrobarometer data, which is a citizen survey on service delivery and governance. And we also did an inline bureaucratic survey to see, to better understand the internal dynamics within the bureaucracy, to see whether there is a shift, oh my God, I'm not. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can hear you.
But I cannot see the screen. What is? I'm not seeing anything. I'm not seeing the screen at all.
That was the blue button, the Teams button. Can you see it?
But team button is not.
Or on one of the windows. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh gosh. Okay. I'm not seeing the team.
Maybe you
button.
are on a web version. If you are on a web version, so you can go to the window.
Oh, okay. Now it's back. Okay, sorry. All right. So the main outcome are performance score given by auditors and the citizen satisfaction index. Next. So the results show that municipal performance improved by 6.8 percentage points. And the effect is concentrated in municipalities below average. So the deliberation was effective in municipalities that were performing at baseline below average. And the mechanism is that we documented is that the deliberation enhance awareness on corruption and misgovernance, lower the trust in the municipality council and other bureaucrats, and this led to a change in outcome. It's very stunning that, in fact, deliberation, by just adding a deliberation stage in the process of decision making, improved performance. But then the performance did not improve because improvement in trust and cohesion is actually the opposite. So the fear that change, the fear that there is a change, that in fact there is that the ground is shaking, as a result of the information from the deliberation that was that came out. This led to improvement in outcome. So there are two big picture points that I wanted to make here. The first one is that, in fact, a lower level of trust can be helpful in contexts where you have a high chance of collusion. So in an environment that's mafia-like environment, trust actually is a bad thing, because when people get fearful about each other in a context where you have a lot of malpractices, you can actually observe improvement in outcome. So, and the second big picture here is that to improve performance is not necessary to bring external experts. You can introduce accountability, horizontal accountability internally, as a way to improve outcome. Next. The second big picture is the process here, which is institutional editing. So what we did is to change the decision-making process slightly. Before, what happened is that the audit reports are in, and then it is sent to the mayor, and the mayor decides what to do. Now we just introduce a closed-door meeting among bureaucrats. I'm going to give more detail about it in a second. And that meeting, that process led to a big improvement in performance and outcome. So the idea of institutional editing is the belief that states are like organisms that are interconnected with interconnected components, and that the capacity of the states arises from complex interaction among these components. So deliberative processes can reduce distortion in governance, refining the system, like genetic editing. Next. So what is important here is that we put the stakeholders, we put the bureaucrats, we put the managers at the center of the process, and show that some incremental, properly designed changes can make the system and the state's capacity much stronger. So it's not by chance that I pull deliberation as the tool to improve governance here, is because deliberation is part of African culture. It's part of the way local governments, not local government, but the traditional societies function. Next. So one important contribution to this exercise is the management literature. So we are showing here that collective deliberation as a management practice can be a way to motivate workers, to motivate managers and overcome passive waste. Next. So in the public sector, the introduction of deliberation can improve not only election outcome, can also improve performance. I've done work on this prior to this study. And it's also a way to endogenize bureaucratic autonomy, So I'm showing here that deliberation can be a way to develop agency, to develop ownership among the bureaucrats. Next. So next. So the context is, as I mentioned earlier, Benin with 77 municipalities, and like most local governments, they provide services for the community, birth certificates, ID cards, public service like road and maintenance, road construction and maintenance, and so on and so forth. They get funding from central government. And but then the role that they play is to execute the plan that they have designed with funding coming from the central government. Next. So the data we have here come from the audit process that happen every year from National Commission for Local Finance. And it's put emphasis on record keeping, transparency in public procurement contract, and the quality of management by the bureaucrats. The second component is very important because it's basically a measure of local level of corruption. So what is interesting here is that from one year to another, when a local government gets higher score, then they get an extra fund from the central government. So it's just an incentive in place to improve performance. So I'm going to go very quickly through the baseline data. You can see that the treatment mean and control mean are similar in terms of the baseline auditor evaluation. Next. Same thing for for record keeping. Next. Same a little bit the treatment communities, the treated like local governments, they have lower level in terms of procurement, transparency of procurement than control, which means that the result we have here is actually it's super strong, because at the baseline the treatment areas have lower score than the control. So I'm going to skip the theoretical framework, but the bigger picture here is that basically there are two levels of pressure to improve performance. One coming from the top, which which to capture the ability of the top management to improve, to discipline, the bureaucrats. The second is horizontal accountability, the pressure that bureaucrats are making on each other. Anyway, and we show that when you shift the belief of, in terms of the ability of the manager to monitor, you also improve the belief in terms of peer pressure. The combination of those two can improve performance. Okay, next. So we did the field experiment in direct partnership with local governments. As I mentioned earlier, we have 20 municipalities treated and controlled. Next. So here is the experiment. So basically what we did is that we had 3 meetings. The first meeting, we presented the municipality audit report from the past year. The second, we presented the results of a survey of bureaucrats so that people can have a sense of how they perceive each other within the local government. And the third is a presentation of the result from citizen survey to see how the municipality, the bureaucrats are perceived by the community at large. So again, the difference between treatment and control is that in one, there is audit with no deliberation. In treatment, you have audit plus deliberation. Next. So this is the timeline. Next. So there are pictures from the meeting. And typically the meeting had, I describe here, some details about the meeting. 32 people attended, 23 bureaucrats, and the rest are invited by bureaucrats. The Secretary General was present. The Secretary General was the Chief of Staff of the Mayor. He was there 97% of the time. So the total duration, 95 minutes, and the compliance rates is what I just described. So it's very important when you are doing an experiment with institution, experiment with decision-making process to make sure that, like the key parameters of the treatment are the same from one unit to another. So you don't want to be a place where the meeting lasts for, let's say 20 minutes, another place where it lasts 2 hours, So anyway, so this is the key dependent variable, which is performance. I'm not going to go through the details of how it's done. Next. Okay. So we have also a repeated cross-section of citizens, talk about citizen experience with the local government. Next. And, experts reports and studies that show we have, we show that there is no collusion, between auditors and bureaucrats, that, so the result that we have, the assessment is not the result of collusive behavior, is actually truthful, okay, next. So this is the estimation strategy. I'm not going to go through the details for the interest of time. Next. Okay, so the key takeaway is that following the deliberation, the auditor scores in treated municipalities increased by 6.8% relative to control. Next. So, and it's not driven by an outlier, so the performance is increased consistently, and similarly, in all municipalities. Next. So, and what is the most stunning result is the fact that following only one deliberation, the performance increased the year after, but it's improved the results are persistent until 2019. When the last we did the last survey. Next. So, and as I mentioned earlier, the effect is concentrated among the low-performing municipalities. So deliberation is super powerful in places that were performing below average. Next. And we didn't find any effect on citizen perception on service delivery, but we find effect in municipalities that were performing below average. Basically, the point here is that the deliberation improved the behavior of bureaucrats, but it didn't translate into improvement in public goods, in service delivery, which is not surprising because, you don't expect things to change, the perception at least to change radically, from one year to another, just following deliberation. The behavior can change, but the translation of behavior in outcome, in positive outcome, might take a few more years. But we find that this has that the perception has improved, in municipalities that were performing below average. Next. So the key takeaway is the deliberation exercise led to a positive impact on municipal performance. The effect is concentrated in those municipalities have below average at baseline. Next. So now let's finish by talking about the mechanism. So what is interesting, as I mentioned earlier, is the fact that, as we'll show in a second, is the results are not driven by an improvement in trust at workplace. People just joining forces, feeling the pressure to perform, and as a result, they did perform. It's not the perception that there is an improvement of corruption practices and misgovernance. In fact, it's the opposite. Next. So from this, from this table, you can see that everything got worse after the deliberation. Like engagement in corruption, treatment to control, people have, an enhanced awareness of bad behavior at all levels. Next. Next. Yeah. And this is another kind of illustration of this. Next. So overall, there is a decline in trust and belief that enforcement has declined. And so the mechanism that we expect is not one where you have, improvements in the sense of improvement in governance, is that people actually thought that, governance got worse, and as a result, things have changed. So let me conclude by making like 3 key points. The first one is institutional editing. So we can improve governance by making targeted addition or subtraction from the process of decision making. And you take this, you can also test this addition, this edit, using experiment. So it's not only an important contribution to political economy, because instead of just describing corrupted practices and bad governments, what we did is to identify why this might be happening, which is, lack of information sharing, lack of autonomy and agency by bureaucrats. And we solve this problem by introducing deliberation. Okay. The second point I wanted to make is that deliberation actually help improve outcome, but it improved outcome by breaking the social cohesion within the bureaucracy. So sometimes breaking internal cohesion of an organization can improve outcome. Obviously, you want this not to last forever. You want to rebuild cohesion at some point, but in the short term, this can have a positive impact, because the bureaucrats now, through the deliberation, they became more and more aware that how bad the situation is. They are, some degree, taking responsibility, collective responsibility for it. And this is what led to, the outcome that we observe. And the last point that I wanted to make is the need in development economics to bring not only experimental exercises, but also theory in partnership with governments and with policymakers. There is a lot of work on policy experiments, but I think this needs to be complemented by reform at the system level, which is a combination of policy and governance. And governance can be improved experimentally as well, but guided by theory and by pinpointing and editing existing decision-making process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Wantchekonhas. Thank you for sharing the results of this experiment you run in Benin and with these key takeaways in political economy. So we'll have time for questions, but after the second presentation. So now I'll ask Yabo Vidogbena if if you can go ahead with your presentation. We are happy to welcome Yabo today. She's a postdoctoral fellow at the Population Studies Center of the University of Pennsylvania and alumni of the African School of Economics. And Yabo will share today insights on her research work and experience. So the floor is yours.
So thank you very much for having me. Thank you, Professor Leona, for sharing your research. So unlike Professor Leona, I am going to make a presentation mostly about myself and my experience. And let me just show you what I prepared. I will be very brief to allow for more interaction, especially because I want to hear from you and exactly what you want to know about like the research experience on my point of view, and so I'm gonna be brief. So the way I want to present this is by telling you a little bit about my background and why I decided to do a PhD, then briefly tell you about my current research, and then I will tell you about challenges to research and how I approach them so far. So the reason why I want to talk about my experience is just because this is right before the PhD. And so the takeaway from the slide will be why I decided to do a PhD and what is my transition from going from the master program to the PhD program in the US. And so just a little bit more about my background is that I love data, and especially the part of data that allow to inform policies. And so I discovered the African School of Economics, and they were offering a program about economics at the time, which was designed to look like international programs. And so I was instructed by different professors across the world, but more specifically, so you can imagine that I learned a lot. But more specifically, again, unlike Professor Leonard, I'm a junior researcher, and the work he just presented was about doing an experiment on the field and bring the result back to you. But one thing that captured my attention and that motivated me to learn more about economics was quasi-experimental methodologies. So that was a costless way for me to tease out a causal effect from existing data set. So costless compared to actually running an experiment on the field. So I wanted to master those techniques. And so that's one of the reasons why I decided to do economics. On the other side, as a student there, I was able to also get hands-on research by working with researchers in the research center of the ASE. And so you can imagine I did everything from survey design to field work to data analysis, but it was mostly whatever what I was asked to do that I was doing. But then my main objective was to be able to think about a research question that is relevant for development, to think about a data set that can allow me to answer my research question, and more importantly, to think about what quasi-experimental methodology can allow me to answer my research question. And that's why I decided to pursue a PhD. The other thing is that I was able to get some support to actually prepare a package for my application and share them with the committee, the recruitment committee in PhD programs in the US. And I got the support from the school at the time. Okay, so the other thing that I don't say in the slide is that I am very, very much interested. I love teaching, I love sharing. And that actually really was also one of the reasons why I really wanted to go to a PhD and therefore is to an academic position. So my current research, I'm broadly interested in development economics, which seemed to be very natural for someone coming from a developing country. And so more specifically, my current research, most of my current research is at the intersection of education and environment. And so more specifically, what I'm looking at is environmental shock and how they affect the educational pathways of young children, adolescents, and very young children in developing countries. And so far, I've been researching like countries such as Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and a lot of other countries in West Africa and in East Africa. So the other part of my research that I usually don't talk about is the trade part. So I also have a paper on trade, which is looking at the structural change in African countries, specifically using a quantitative model to be able to track the structural change over time in African countries. So the last thing that I want to talk about are the challenges for research. So as a development economics researcher, one of the biggest challenge is probably data. And so I guess my advice is collaborate. All my work currently are collaborative, and just talk to people. I was lucky enough to be able to have advisors who were working on project recruited me, and then I met so many different people, and that led me to have access to some data set that are not publicly available. So collaborate, talk to people, because there is always someone who knows someone who knows someone who has the data that is perfect for your research question. The other thing is that I also use a lot of publicly available data, such as DHS and mixed data set, which is collected by UNICEF in a lot of different countries across the world. So that's another way of starting your research as well. The other thing is, which is a big challenge, and I probably don't have I have one way that I approach this, and I'm going to share it with you. So it's the time management between research and other activities. So most of the time, imagine that you are a researcher, you have teaching duty, and then you have any other thing you can think about, and then you have your research project. So we tend to usually just delay how much time we spend on research, because everything else has actually a short deadline. So if you have to teach, then you have to be in class and you have to prepare for the class. And so those short deadlines actually allow you to get the work done. So for research, we usually don't have those hard deadlines. And so usually we just keep on reporting and reporting. So my advice would be to have an external commitment device. Mine was my advisor when I was doing the PhD. And I always have weekly meeting with my advisor, which always led me to work more all the time. The other thing that I want to highlight that I don't have on the slides are publications and grant applications. So as a junior researcher, one thing that is very important is to be able to showcase that you have the skills to be a senior researcher. And so if you have any paper, just put it out there and get some feedback on the paper. Don't delay publishing your paper. And the other thing is grant application. You can start applying for grant. Even if you don't get them, just keep applying until one day you can get the grant, or collaborate with people who actually have skills to write a proper grant proposal, and then would be able to get you to being in a team that succeeded to have a grant application accepted. So that's what I have to share with you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Yabo, and thank you, Leonard and Yabo, both of you, for these presentations. So now we have time for questions. Let me check if there are some questions. and if participants would like to ask questions directly. So let me, because there is one question from Boubacar Batili. He's from University Alioune Diop in Senegal. He's thanking Professor Leonard Wantchekonhas for his presentation, and he's asking whether the results of the audit have legal consequences.
So maybe I might be responding. Not really. In its sense, it's there are three aspects. Is record keeping, is the rule in terms of procurement have been followed, and to also capture performance of individual bureaucrats. So it's an audit of a very serious agency of the government, actually praised by the World Bank, and the incentives is positive incentive. Like if you improve, then there will be higher level of transfer to a local government afterwards. If you don't, then nothing happened actually. I'm pretty. We don't have any record of one individual who have basically perform in a criminal manner that could have led to him being prosecuted. We don't have record of that. It depends on the fact that it's really administrative auditing, more than kind of criminal, investigation of any particular behavior. But again, the point here that that I wanted to really highlight is the simplicity of the solution. All we did is, before the audit report is sent to the mayor, closed door, the staff discuss basically they discuss the finding, and that has consequences, not only for performance, but also raise awareness of the level of corruption in the municipality. So anyway, so that's basically the highlight: low cost but effective. And beyond this is the fact that this exercise mobilize agency, mobilize ownership of local governance, something that would have long-term consequences as well. Yeah. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. So I can see that Shahir raised his hand, so you can ask your question, Shahir.
Yes. Thank you, Eliane. Thank you, Professor. It's very interesting and also very policy relevant for different countries. I just have two questions. Perhaps one of them might be a bit naive because it's not really my area of expertise. First, I mean, is one of the factors that can help us understand this result the nature of information that is being deliberated itself, whether perhaps there is a problem of asymmetric information between different parties, and that's why the effect was positive but insignificant, or that deliberation itself is not as informative as it should be. That's on the one hand. And on the other, looking at, in general, African countries, different areas in the north, Northern Africa, Southern Africa, and so on, to what extent the role of informal institutions can help us also understand why deliberation might not work. Is it because perhaps social trust or informal institutions are more important, or we have any other explanation for that? Thank you very much.
Yeah, so very quickly, what is very encouraging from this exercise is that after the deliberation, all the participants hated it. when we ask them, was deliberation a good thing? No. If anything, it makes the level of cohesion and trust within the organization even lower. And yet, it has led to an improvement in performance, not performance in terms of record keeping, performance in terms of following the rules for procurement contract, and performance also in terms of other administrative duty. So we shouldn't be afraid of deliberation. This is what it shows, because we think that deliberation is the way for us to build cohesive group and to get along. Life is great, but sometimes, particularly in a dysfunctional environment, particularly when you have major distortion within organization, deliberation can be the solution. Particularly when it's closed door, because you allow people to yell at each other, to take personal responsibility, and so on. In fact, I should let you know that my motivation from starting this exercise is what I observe in NBA. NBA, when a team is losing a lot of games, you have the players only meeting. The coach is not there, the ownership is not there, doors are closed, they yell at each other for hours. And then afterwards, they manage to get things done, So sometimes shaking things up, disrupting internal organization, for instance, can be a solution. And I think, again, I mentioned the NBA, but also I can also talk about African communities. Like you go to villages, when something happens, people go after each other publicly, and they meet, they talk, they try to figure things out. So that's so what I'm saying, I mean, the bottom line here is that we should embrace deliberation, particularly when you want to build collective agency, when you want to build, awareness, a higher level of awareness about the problem that we are facing. So there's something I didn't say earlier that I think I need to stress. The first one is this exercise is inspired by local culture. That's one. Is political economy. We think that we need to improve states, local states. Not just bringing RCT result and get the hope that things are going to get better. And then the third element that I want to stress is we get local government to collaborate on this. I think it's the combination of collaboration with governments, with design and experiments inspired by local culture, and also an experiment which is theoretically sound. We understand where the problem was, and we identify shifting beliefs as a key. And the way you should believe is by getting people in the room and getting people to talk to each other. Anyway, so I think if this kind of multidisciplinarity engagement with policymakers and with local culture, this combination of the three aspects is what I find. This is what I wanted to communicate, to the colleagues, that development economics going forward has to be more multidisciplinary, but at the same time, solution that we want to imagine has to be inspired by the lived experience, by also the local culture, so that it can be effective. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So we have more questions. Let's start. Sarah Mitila, please.
Yeah, hi. Thank you both for the presentation. My question is for Yabo. You talk about collaboration. of course, this might be easy for seasoned researchers, but as a PhD student, I'm not quite sure how do you tackle the process of collaboration? Like, how do you go about asking people that if, I mean, I'm not sure about how the process is. Can you just give me a little bit, yeah, like how do you go about it? That's what I want to know.
So I guess the idea of collaboration that I was talking about, one way to do it, which is very easy, is to work with your classmate or your researcher mate who have the same interest as you. That's one way. The other way is to look at your advisors and anybody else in your department who has actually the same research experiment as you. So the idea might be to go talk to people about your interest, and then eventually, if they also have the same interest, they can tell you about possible work that they're working on, or possible research project where they think you will be valuable as a researcher. And then maybe you can start working with them. That was my experience, at least. Talking and telling people about the fact that I was very much interested in development economics allowed me to know what people were working on, and then to know what research project they were actually working on. And I got invited into to working on different set of projects, and that's how I started my collaboration, just by stating my interest to anyone who want to hear about it. So that's how I go about it most of the time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah and Yabo. So we have other questions. Etienne, please go ahead.
Thank you, Professor Wantchekonhas, for the very interesting presentation, and also Mrs. Vidogbena for your insights, for sharing your experience and the advice. Indeed, we are all overwhelmed with administrative tasks, and we always used to postpone our delivery in research. So I hope that all the audience here will be more engaged in your advice, and try to commit more to maybe to commit with other co-authors, and try to deliver in research. I would like to ask a question for Professor Wantchekonhas. I would like to know, I'm curious to know about the challenges you and your co-authors faced during the field work when doing those interviews. Did they redirect your study somehow? And the second question, based on your findings, you found that deliberation improves performance. Maybe you answered it somehow, but I would like to know if this effect does depend on maybe the inclusiveness or the political context. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a wonderful question. Okay, let me put it this way. We will, the next version of a paper, we are going to look very closely at the ethnic and gender composition of the people who are deliberating, and see, for instance, to what extent diversity affects the quality of deliberation. Okay, originally, we spend a lot of time trying to engage with the central government agency that does the audit report, and also with local governments, so that they see us as partner. We were in to help to improve outcome. And the fact that improving outcome was rewarded by an increase in transfer to the local government, it's also helped, And one important element as well is, again, as I mentioned earlier and repeatedly, is the fact that deliberation is part of a local culture. For them, deliberation is something that they do all the time. It's not something, because you have family, you have village level, you have team level, this kind of horizontal accountability, this culture of horizontal accountability is something which is very present in many African contexts. I think so as a result, what we came up with, what we did was very consistent with what we originally planned, because we had this early period of engagement that helped us to be aligned, and also the fact that we came with a clear message that we are here to help. We are here to help improve outcome, even though, in the end, after people observing what happened, they did not like it, But again, the fact that they were rewarded by the improvement, I think is a good way for them to continue, basically talking to each other and improving outcome. I think something that we also want to double check later on is to see whether the deliberation continued after we left. After 2019, when we did the last kind of data collection, has people informally continued talking to each other. I mean, like, for instance, the initial deliberation might be like 3 days over 3 items, but then maybe afterwards we can think about other means, other mechanisms to keep people engaged, and anyway. So, but we need to. I mean, we'll continue, sort of thinking about how we can improve this exercise, not only short term and long term, because we strongly believe that could be one of the solutions in improving governance and reducing corruption, in local governments in Africa. And by and large, I think that we don't exploit enough the opportunities that decentralization provides for improving development outcome. We always think about the central government. We always think about the president. But in fact, mayors, village leaders, they can be a major, major player if they have the support that, that they need, the technical support that they need to improve outcome at local level. And then the goal, if it works well in one location, you can have ripple effect in neighboring locations. And as a result, development will happen, at macro level, but not from top down, from bottom up, So I think this exercise is, I wanted to present it because I feel like it's very, very promising. It shows what is possible, what is possible, even at low cost. Yeah, it also shows how important to mobilize agency. When development narratives are always helping people, saving people, not people saving themselves, not people taking ownership and mobilize their agency in solving issues of governance and local development capacity. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a question from Adezola.
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, great. Hi. Okay, that's the camera. Hi. Good morning, everyone. My name is Adezola, joining you from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much, Professor Leonard and Yabo, for your presentation. I have more of a comment than a question. I currently work at the World Bank, and my comment is on collaboration. I think somebody made a point about collaboration. I just wanted to mention that also our policy colleagues who work in think tanks, multinational institutions, also are keen on academic research and for collaboration. And the challenge most times is just the time, right? So for example, I have many ideas. I've worked on many projects which just end up being reports or at best working papers, and we just do not have the time sometimes to push it towards publication. So this comment is just again that reach out to your policy colleagues on pushing some of this research. We have great ideas, great data. Sometimes you also have data, and then we can work together on some of these big ideas, because we are pushing evidence-based policy, and sometimes we just generate enough evidence for government policy somewhere, but some of these ideas don't make it to publication because of just time. Also maybe, but mostly time to push it to publication. So my comment is essentially, reach out to your policy colleagues to look for how to collaborate, particularly moving many of these projects from working papers to journal publications. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe,
Do you want to?
Yabo, you want to say something? I mean, it's a comment, but maybe I should say one word very quickly. Two things. One of my main complaints here, for instance, the teaching at at Yale, I mean, particularly at Princeton, is that I don't see enough students. I don't see students coming to me and just talk to me about something that they have in mind, and I mean, and sometimes you have people just looking at your CV, but then they don't have a sense of the range of topics you are working on. Like, for instance, currently I'm working on maybe 10 big research initiatives. Only 3 are being showcased on my CV, or 2. There are many more. And for those projects, I need co-author. I want to engage with someone, and I will, because I cannot spend a lot of time on it. So I think, as Yabo have said, you have an idea, talk to your colleagues, talk to your former or your current professors. You say, okay, can we do something with it? What is the next step? Very practical. And but don't be afraid of the data stuff. Like sometimes, there's no perfect data. You can always find a way to tell your story, by with different econometric strategies and empirical strategies, to make your point. Some referee might not like it, but at least if the story is there, you'll keep working on it to a point where someone is going to like it. It's so frustrating to see how few people, particularly in Africa, people have not developed this kind of culture of publication, of writing things up and submit it. You talk to some people, they are so knowledgeable, they are so smart. You look at their CV, they have not written anything. I mean, so I think it's really important, to sort of see publication collaboration as something really essential, not only for personal development, but also your own culture and knowledge. I mean, like you never completely forget what you have worked on in the past, so you might as well try. Anyway, so I think that's a wonderful comment. Yeah.
So maybe we have time for one question. I don't know, Stefania. I have also a question, but go ahead, Stefania, for your question.
But now I think we can just bring all the questions together, and then we'll answer.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mine is super quick. So thank you, Yabo, for your very nice presentation. So perhaps a tough question. Is there anything that you would have done differently and that can serve as a lessons for others? So that's my 1 million question for you, and perhaps if you have any suggestion for how to get also peer review informally. You mentioned about get your paper out there as a working paper. Is there anything else that you might have experienced or you would recommend? Thank you.
So should I reply?
Yeah. We have 1 minute.
Okay. So is there anything I could have done differently? Probably yes. Publishing my job market paper as soon as I graduated from my PhD program. I've been delaying that for about, I graduated in May, so I've been delaying that since that time because I always want to do one more thing and one more thing and one more thing. And I guess I'm not really taking my advice of putting my work out there. And so that's one thing. That's one thing that I'm thinking about. The other thing about putting your work out is probably to publish them on. I'm probably sure I cannot say those names, but sometimes there are some like pages online where you can actually submit your paper and it can be viewed as a working paper. So one that is very famous is the NBER, but then it's not, I don't think everybody can publish in the NBER working paper series, but they are usually working paper series and you can definitely get your work on those websites and then make it available to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so time runs fast, so it's time to conclude now. I want to say a big thank you to our speakers today for their presentations. It was nice having you, Yabo, again, Leonard, for the second time and the first time with DevConnect, so very happy. And I want to thank everyone who joined and participated today at this webinar. The recording and additional resources will be shared soon. And I want also to inform you that we'll have our next webinar on December 16. We'll have 2 presentations, 2 papers with a panel of discussants. So keep connected with us to learn more about our activities. And to conclude, have a great day, evening for some of you, and thank you again for joining us today.